to the Crossing Church and to Pastor Kermit and Brother Jeff for reaching out and extending this opportunity to come here and talk a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, and that is being prepared for everything we do in life, but here specifically being prepared in building your self-insurance policy for self-reliance. So, I started Hope for Survival about 5.5 years ago. He offers permanent eternity is what Hope stands for. And in the O, you can see 4 essentials there: food, water, shelter, and security that you have to have, okay? All right, just some simple rules for the road, I like to call them. Who am I? I'm Butch. I was born in West Virginia. I'm a proud Mountaineer. I grew up a liberal. I was a redneck with no future, destined for nowhere. My dream was to be on MTV, and I didn't need to know English, math, or any of those essentials. And God works in amazing ways, but I was a 2-year college dropout music major. Because they started MTV at that point, and that was my goal. I was walking through a mall one day, and there was a TV store. And I heard his voice inside on this TV, and I thought it was John Wayne. So I turned around, I went in the TV store, and it was Ronald Reagan giving one of his I Love America speeches. And that changed my life forever. I went and I had hair down to my waist, and I went and got my hair cut off, joined the military, spent 20 years in the Air Force. The Air Force was good to me. 10 of those 20 years, I went and worked in special operations as a security advisor supporting JSOC and SOCOM and European Pacific theaters and special operations. And I didn't know it then, but looking back on it, God was preparing me for the times that we live today. The schooling, the opportunities, the exposure to real world events. So I retired from the military. I've predominantly spent 10 years of that 20 working in the counterterrorism program. I was in Department of Defense, but supporting the State Department. And that was pretty much that. I retired, became a defense contractor for about 18 years, and I left. I was the anti-terrorism officer for, if you remember, Reagan's Star Wars Dream Strategic Defense Initiative. I went to work for that program for 17 years in Huntsville, Alabama, and I got out of the anti-terrorism title and went into emergency management. And I was building emergency plans for large facilities and about 6,000 employees. And through that training, I went back to school and got my master's. My undergrad's in psychology, and I went back and got my master's in emergency management. Who cares? But it all ties into why I'm here doing this, okay? And as part of the job requirement, I had to go get certified with FEMA. And even though I was a defense contractor, a lot of the emergency management we were working tied in parallel with FEMA. So I got that certification. While I was doing these FEMA classes, one of the big things that kept hitting me square in the head was, I don't matter. You don't matter. You don't matter. It's about critical infrastructure. It's not personal, right? And that little voice kept telling me, you need to do more, you need to do more, you need to do more. And after a period of trying to figure out what the do more part was, is when the Hope for Survival started, wrote the book, first book, and so forth. And that's why every opportunity to speak to a person or a group anywhere, we have traveled to numerous states, groups from 5 people to 100 plus groups, Christians, non-Christians, to try to spread the word that you need to get prepared. And hopefully my job is to convince you not just how to get prepared, but why you need to do it. Because if you waste your time just buying stuff, it's pointless. You've got to understand why you're doing this, okay? All right. Remember, always strive to be a hard target and not a soft target. Nothing I say is personal. It's always professional. So if something flies out of my mouth, I've gotten a lot better over the last 5 years, but I used to have a bad habit of using words referring to the other political side. But I quit. And there's a reason why, which I'll share with you through this series, okay? Always remember, 1 is none, 2 is 1, and 3 is better. In everything you do, 1 is none, 2 is 1, and 3 is better. All right? The goal is to always be left of bang. The threat is here, and you want to be here. You want to be able to detect it, see it, feel it, and know it before you get to that line of where bang is at, and that is the threat. Okay? If you want copies of today's slides, sign up with your email address at the front table. There's a clipboard. You can sign up there. Today's class is class 1 of 4 classes in this series. It is a building block series, okay? It builds to month 5 to where, for those that stay with it, we're gonna do a 3-hour exercise with you, breaking you into urban, suburban, and rural groups with scenarios driven, and you've got to work your way through these scenarios using what you've learned over these 4 months. And I'll tell you, it's going to be really, really difficult to pack everything into 90 minutes, 1 time a month for 4 months, and expect you to walk out of here having it all, okay? I was just telling someone before we started, some people do preparedness for a hobby, but if you really want to do it and do it right, it's a full-time thing. It takes a ton of effort and time on your part, and money for some, to do it right, okay? Class 5 is the exercise, and most importantly, relax and have fun, okay? Don't be stressed. The goal is to not put fear in you. The goal is to share with you and allow you to build confidence. It's kind of a crawl, walk, run, okay? All right, so here is the layout of the classes, and as we go forward, I will tweak these a little bit, depending on, as I work through the slides. I'm basically pulling from about 14 different classes of the 19 classes that I offer, but I'm pulling pertinent information to build it into that 90-minute segment to try to give you the best of the information, okay? Both books are over here. We have book 1. If you have been listening to, well, if you've been following along with the Colonel Mann and Sean Ryan interviews with Sarah Adams and Jane Doe, you've been hearing them talk about this thing called the mindset. Okay? Well, book 2 in my series is called The Mindset. And it's talking about a lot of what we're going to talk about today, and that is having the right mindset. All right? Trying to understand what are threats, and threats can be in numerous baskets. So anyway, the books are over here. If you have interest, my wife would be happy to. And all proceeds from the books after we pay the print actually comes back to this church, to the food ministry, for 4 years now, I think. So. All right, so when I had been teaching preparedness classes down in Alabama for, I don't know, 10 years roughly, when the whole Hope for Survival thing started. And I sat down and I kind of built this and laid it out. And the foundation of what I'm trying to do, what we're trying to do, is this right here. All right? Everything is based around risk. You've got to know how to do risk assessments, how to manage it, do threat mitigation, and build plans. If you go to the grocery store and buy food, you buy that food because it's things you like and probably because you've used it up at home and you're buying more to replace it, right? Well, you know that because that's how you plan when you go shop, right? How can you prepare if you don't know what you're preparing for? And it's all based around threats, how you're going to mitigate it, and so forth. And it starts with the individual, the family, and your community. Okay? All right, so let's talk about disasters. In the disaster category, there's 3 types of disasters: natural, man-made, and technological, right? Natural, we just went through Hurricane Helene, snow, ice, earthquakes, volcanic, hurricanes, tornadoes. These are all natural type disasters. Man-made, terrorism, bio, agro, narco, economic, active shooter. Technological is a huge one. If you're paying attention to what's going on in the world right now, and it is moving quickly, and that is the whole AI, transhumanism, technocracy. All of this stuff is flying by while all these other things are happening around us, right? It is really, really important. And I spent so many hours during Hurricane Helene. I volunteered down at Elk Mills Poga for about 6 or 7 weeks on site because of having an emergency management background. I got called and asked would I come help. Understanding what is the government's role, what is your state's role, and what is your county's role during a disaster. It will save you a lot of heartache if you understand these roles. What the government's going to do or not do, what is the state going to do or not do, and what is your county going to do or not do. Do they have plans? Most cases I'm coming across, they don't have plans. The emergency manager in Carter County, Tennessee, Elk Mills, Poga, Hampton, that area over there, they just fired the emergency manager because he didn't have a plan in place when Helene hit. I'm talking to you about building plans for you and your family, the same as we expect authorities to build plans to support and to protect us. All right? Government state response, critical infrastructure is priority at every level. About 7 or 8 years ago, down in Huntsville, I was asked to brief the FBI in Huntsville on emergency management and critical infrastructure. And I'm sitting in here talking to all these techno nerds. They were all IT whiz-banger guys that worked for the agency. And I'm talking about critical infrastructure and so forth. And they're looking at me like they were lost in space. These were federal agents that had absolutely no clue of roles that they were going to partake in during a disaster. Okay? Incident management at the local level, priorities, continuity of government, roads, hospitals, utilities, comms. This is the government and state. FEMA supports regions and direct requests from state leadership. There was so much heartburn and butt-ache over FEMA's involvement in Hurricane Helene. Okay? Why aren't they this? Where are they? Why aren't they that? What's FEMA's role? FEMA is a very small organization. They don't have a ton of manpower. And in order for FEMA to come to you, the mayor in that local community where the disaster's at has to put together an assessment of needs. It has to go to the governor. The governor has to put it in a category, sign it, send it to the regional FEMA, who sends it to DC, who then takes it to the president, typically, right? And that's where it'll be decided. There are politics that plays a role in that too. All right, I've experienced it. FEMA is not Johnny on the spot. They do not come in, they don't come in where we had people riding mules up into the hills, taking aid to folks who couldn't get it. FEMA was sitting in their nice heated and air-conditioned panel van down at a site, taking applications. That's their role, right? It's their role. Trying to get the Appalachia people to understand that was very, very difficult, who were in that disaster zone. Preparedness means self-reliance, to take care of yourself and your community. What is your community plan? All right, what is preparedness? It's a state of readiness, 24 hours a day, times 7 days a week. Yourself, your spiritual, physical, and psychological well-being. You have to take care of these areas for you. Bless you. Take care of these areas for you. If you don't know you, you're not going to be a lot of good to others. All right? Family, food, water, shelter, protection. A state of actions that are taken as precautionary measures in the face of potential disaster. Forecasting and taking steps prior to a possible event before it happens. We have every insurance in the world imaginable. Some of us forced, you know. Everyone in the home works, the cat works, the dog works. We have fish insurance, cat insurance, car insurance, home insurance. We insure everything. But the single most important items that you need to keep you alive that are your insurance policy is food and water. If you don't have that, none of that other stuff that's robbing your accounts matters. Okay? Prepping. I call it preparing and I don't call it prepping. If you look up the definitions, prepping, the action or process of preparing for something. It is a single action, kind of like scheduling your colonoscopy, right? While so many who are preppers are preparing for the big one that's coming sometime out there. Look how many disasters that are occurring around you that need your preparedness, resources, and skills, right? Spiritual, knowing yourself is the most important part of preparedness. Where do you stand right now? How well do you know you? If you had to depend on yourself to protect or save your life or the life of a family member, how would you handle it? a car wreck, a shooting accident, a home invasion, jogging or hiking accident while alone, physical attack on your family. The list goes on and on and on, right? This is preparedness. Would you suffer from brain freeze, and are you physically able? No offense, men. Again, it's all strictly professional. I can tell you in the many years of working in this field, probably 80 to 90% of those who step forward and take action immediately are ladies. Where I work, build emergency plans, the men would just sit and look at each other, and I would have mothers and grandmothers and individuals who survived disasters stepping forward and grabbing the others by the scruff, saying, get it in gear. Okay. I don't know if it's the motherly instinct thing, the psychological part of it, but ladies are more proactive. I see it in Hope for Survival. You know, the ladies who are doing all kinds of stuff to prepare their homes, right? Brain freeze, you can be the most macho male out there. You can wear your Tarzan suit on Halloween, and I've watched men, when a disaster occurs, I've watched men crumble. And it's not an insult to them, okay? It's a psychological thing that happens up here, right? Where they don't click. They go into this brain freeze thing. If you're leading your family and leading your community, do you know if that's what's going to happen to you when an event occurs, right? And a way to get past this is just repetition. Repetitive doing the same things over and over and over to help you, okay? Blessed is each man who trusts in the Lord, whose trust is in the Lord, Jeremiah 17:7. But if any provide not for his own, and especially for those of his own house, he hath denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. 1 Timothy 5-8. God will take care of me. It's hard to say this standing in a church. God will take care of me. From Africa to Bosnia to Sarajevo to tornadoes in Alabama, Hurricane Helene. Christians are impacted the same as anyone else when a disaster, whatever type that disaster is, right? God will provide. Yeah, 7 days after the flood went through and wiped out their homes, there were volunteers, mostly Christian. There were volunteers who went up into the mountains toting food and medicine to all the individuals who were up there, right? So what I'm saying to you is, if you think you're going to call 1-800-WHAN and get a pizza delivered to you when all your food's gone, you're going to starve to death. Hate it, but all right. Food. Federal government, FEMA, they keep bouncing around. They say 7, 10 to 14 days, 6 months for your own self-reliance, okay? Prepare day to day to avoid the rush during the disaster. You'll hear me use the 90-10 numbers a lot. 90% of the people around us in our country and the world are not prepared. 90%. 10% are those who are running in the opposite direction from the 90% when an event occurs, okay? Short, medium, long-term foods, canned, freeze-dried, dehydrated. When I do I think it's the next month, when we do the block on food, we'll go into this a lot more in detail. Okay, water, clean potable water, well water, catch system, river, creek, stream. You gotta have a way to clean it and know when it's clean. Ability to sanitize, purification, Berkey, bleach, boil, 2 to 3 gallons per day per person, 8 pounds per gallon That's about 1,050 gallons per year per person that you need. When I was down at Poga at Hurricane Helene, post-disaster, the folks up on the hills were good to go. They had wells. And we kept asking them, have you checked the water in your well? Oh, I don't need to, that's clean water. That's clean water. 3 to 5 days after they started coming down out of the hills telling us the well water turned brown. Right? They had been using it and drinking it because they assumed that water was good. We gave them test kits, they took them back up, they tested the water, we tested it for some of them that weren't capable of doing so, and they had bad water. And you know what comes after drinking bad water, right? So you have drunk bad water and you're now flat on your back and you don't have the medicines that you need or a medic in your community to help take care of you. And you're running back and forth between bed and the toilet because you drink bad water, okay? It's another thing you gotta worry about. Shelter, house, tent, car, shelter. Goal is to avoid the elements in your region. Security, self-protection, family protection from all threats. That can be lethal and non-lethal. 5-second plan. This is one of the most basic plans that you can set up. It's really fairly easy. The 5-second plan, it means that if an event occurs that within 5 seconds you can grab your gear and you're out the door. It may be like what's happening in California right now with the fires. Okay, it could be a tornado. The 5-second plan. Are you prepared to leave your location and possibly never return? That's the hard question. Is that when you leave, you may never go back because everything that you had is gone. The 5-minute plan, tornado or derecho, flood, civil strife. Can you leave your home prepared in 5 minutes with everything you need? The 5-hour plan, that's the hurricane, regional, local fire, civil strife, allows more time to pack a vehicle or trailer. Do you know what you would want to take with you to survive? Several years ago, I had folks that kept asking us like, yeah, you know, we got all these files and we got all these items of pictures and diplomas and bank accounts and all that. So the thing, if you see at the table, there's a little Hope for Survival silver stick over here. I basically built a digital filing cabinet on that stick so you can take all your documents and scan them. And if the event that you can't get them out of the disaster or you lose them, you have them in backup on that stick. Okay, there's I think 20 some files on there. You could add more to it. Day bags, everyday bags, bug out bags. Everyone watches and reads books and they all have a bug out bag. Right? What's in your bug out bag? Well, I was reading this book and it was telling me I should have. No. What do you have in your bag that you can use every day if you break down coming home? If you're at work and you get evacuated out of the building because of a fire alarm and it's freezing cold or it's steaming hot, what do you have in that bag that will help take care of you? Maybe a lid, raincoat, extra medicine, water, energy bar for your day-to-day. What if your love and joy little Susie's driving her car and she's going from home to her job? Little Susie's your daughter, or it can be little Bobby too. And between home and work, they have an accident and they go over the side, off the side of the road. And where they went down to, you can't see it from the main road, and they're pinned in their car. What do you have in that bag in there to help them that they can reach when they're driving? A whistle, something to stay dry, something to stay warm, water, energy bars, things of that nature. They can't get to their phone because it went flying when they went over the side, so they can't call for help. And if they're around here, they may be in an area where there's no signal, right? planning ahead, taking care of those that you love. Okay? Bug out bag, this is a bigger bag, it's heavier, but the max should be about 25 pounds. Don't forget children and pets. Everything you need to survive for extended period of time, adjust for type of event. If you're bugging out in a vehicle, you can have a smaller bag and a bigger bag that you keep in your vehicle. If you have to ditch your vehicle, you can grab the smaller bag and go with it. All right, with the number of increased disasters occurring around us, now's the time to build your emergency plans. Emergency food, water, security, family, communication plans. Did you know a federal government study says 90% of U.S. citizens will die? 90% of U.S. citizens will die. 90% of U.S. citizens will die during any type of a pandemic or electromagnetic pulse or EMP event. That was probably 10, 12 years ago. Do you know your government does not even have a pandemic plan? They have a pandemic recovery plan, but they don't have a pandemic plan. Does that not scare you? The world looks to the United States to lead, and they follow, and we don't have a plan. Again, address your spiritual, psychological, physical well-being. Prepare yourself and your family today. The hardest part of preparing is adjusting your mindset. That is the hardest part, adjusting your mindset. Be blessed, thankful, and always have hope, because we are blessed people. So the first step in preparedness, the most important first step, is understanding and knowing you. Do you know, again, your spiritual, physical, psychological position? Why do you prepare? What makes you tick? Are you a leader or are you a follower? Some people are destined for both. There's nothing wrong with being a follower. You can be a very good follower and provide a support role to your leader. Okay? We need people in both. Do you honestly believe in what you're trying to convince others to do? Do you practice and understand why you are preparing and what for? Preparedness is a lifestyle and a mindset. A preparer and not a prepper. Can you explain why you believe what you believe in a convincing way to get others to follow your lead to prepare? Do you know how you would react in a very stressful situation, such as watching a person die, heavy blood flow, seeing a family member injured, or suffering your own injury? How would you handle it? Men and women, some people simply see blood and they pass out. It's better to find out now than later. Will you suffer brain freeze or stay in action when a stressful event occurs? These are things you must figure out sooner than later. If you are a leader and people are counting on you, you need to know yourself best and foremost. 90% of being prepared is simply being aware. What you see and recognize first allows you to alter your pattern and plans to potentially save your life and others as well. Preparing is more than buying and stocking resources. It's about building a mindset around your plans to defeat and overcome obstacles such as a Mother Nature or man-made events on the local level that will impact you directly. What do you see when you walk in the mall? Sell ads, sell signs, great deals? Or are you looking at who else is in the mall? Are you looking for exit strategies in the mall, how you're going to get out of the mall, how you're going to get out of the restaurant, how you're going to get out of the church? Where are the exit doors? Is the table bolted to the floor? Can I pick it up and use it as a shield if need be in a restaurant or anywhere I may be? If you have family with you in a restaurant or in church, have you talked to them about a plan? When we lived in Alabama, we went to a mega church, and I was on their security team there. And during Sunday morning, there were 2 services, and during 2 services, we had about 30 to 35 security guys on duty during the services, right? Now, there's good and bad to that. The good is that you have all this security, you got cameras and all that stuff. The bad is, in Alabama, half that church was packing, right? And I always told my wife, if you ever hear the first gunfire go off, get on the floor and hug the carpet as tight as you can, because if everyone's looking this way and the shot's behind you, right, then everyone who's packing is going to turn and they're not going to know where that shot come from, most likely. Fortunately, we had armbands that we would put on. But if shots are fired, how many of those 30 guys do you think are honestly going to remember to grab that red armband and stick it on? Right? So, anyway. When you're stopped in traffic, are you looking at your phone or examining what is around you to allow the quickest getaway path by auto or on foot if you're trapped? Has anyone ever driven through Chattanooga at the end of the day, work day? It's a nightmare there. I mean, it would add an hour to 2 hours to my trip, 4-hour trip home from Huntsville. Sometimes it would take me 6 hours because I'm stuck in Chattanooga, and I'm always looking around. It's like, man, I need to try to get to the right lane where there's near an exit, because if I stay trapped in this traffic, I have to get out and run. My quickest route is across the oncoming, which is also stopped. You know, so are you focused on Ukraine and the stolen election, or learning who lives around you, and are they or could they be like-minded? Your community. Do you attend a local church? Does your church have emergency plans for the church family and local community? What role will your church play during a community disaster? Are you participating in local meetings with education boards and chamber of commerce meetings to impact local political directions in your community? Community, community. You're going to hear me say this over and over and over. Especially, we've been teaching it for 4 years, and with new threat information that's coming out in the last 60 to 90 days, community. It's about community. You've got to have community, okay? You're going to desperately need community in the coming year to 2 years. You've got to have it. Am I wrong? I paid him $1.
Yeah, I'm agreeing.
I paid him $1. Do you know or have you met your local sheriff? Do you even know your sheriff's name? Right? Fortunately, the community, the neighborhood that I live in and we live in, our community team, it was one of the first things we did after we wrote our security plan was we called the sheriff, invited him over, showed him our plan. And he said, once you have it final and you have a mission statement, call me back, I'll come over. He did, and he's been back a couple of times. He came back just before Christmas and sat down with our wives for Jefferson County. Our sheriff is involved in our community plan, right? And he keeps telling us, I wish I could take this to other communities and get them to do the same thing, all right? We have an event occur, power goes out, we have people that go door to door, knocking on doors to say, hey, are you home, are you okay, what do you need, right? You have medical needs, is there anything else? Trees go down, chainsaws are out, and before anyone says, hey, the road's blocked, there's a team out cutting those trees and getting them off the road, so people can transit, but also emergency vehicles need to come in. And the list goes on and on. What you understand now is part of doing your homework and understanding threats and how you are vulnerable. All right? So you want to prepare for what you can control. Hazards will always be a part of the world we live in. We can't control snow, ice, tornadoes. But what we can do is prepare for these events, right? The event occurred, do the assessment. Your plan says this is what we're going to do to recover from it, okay? The point being, focus on taking care of what you can control, your spiritual, physical, psychological, as well as food, water, shelter, security, the health of your family and home. Keep your feet grounded and focus on what you can do. I have encountered over the years people who are 10 feet off the ground because they're mad because of Trump this and they did that. And it's like, how is it going to affect you? Well, it's not. Then why are you worried about it? You know they don't play fair, right? So if it's not taking money out of your account, if it's not taking food off your table, and if it's not impacting you and your community directly, know about it, but don't worry about it, okay? Many refuse to prepare because of their belief the system or the government will provide, take care of the event and or rescue them from the situation they face. That is the job of first responders, right? Many believe preparedness is never the individual's responsibility. I served their country and our government for 40 years. I have zero faith in my government. I'm not anti-government. I'm not anti-American, right? I'm a Christian, patriot, white male whose government said is most likely to be a domestic terrorist. Thank you, government. That is one of the drivers. Do you realize it's becoming more and more aware. Over the last 3.5, soon to be 4 years of the current administration, there were thousands of veterans who have been out across this country trying to maintain a degree of stability in our communities, in what we're doing. GWAT, Global War on Terrorism, is coming out more and more now. People who are trying to get others to prepare because of the instability of dumb decisions and poor planning of our government. Okay? That's just the things that we know, right? It's depending on myself, depending on my family, depending on my community, depending on my church, and together we self-sustain because they are not coming to help us, okay? It's just how the system works. The bottom line here is ask yourself the question, are you the biggest threat to your preparedness and planning? Are you the biggest threat? Are you the putter offer? Are you the someone else is going to do it? So what concerns you today? I'll take a drink of water while someone tells me what concerns you today. That the Steelers lost again?
Open borders.
Open borders? Oh yeah. Okay?
Terrorist cells.
Oh yeah. When I got out of that field,
I'm sorry.
When I got out of that field, I hoped and prayed I would never have to see it again. Coming back from overseas. So we got open borders, terrorist cells,
Cyber attacks, EMPs, stuff like that.
cyber attacks, EMPs,
Weather.
weather,
Yeah.
weather manipulation.
Cold-hearted men everywhere.
What's that?
Cold-hearted people.
Cold-hearted people? Yeah. Boy, did I ever meet them during Hurricane Helene coming up in the hills. Once you broke that barrier, they were awesome. They were patriot, American-loving people who just couldn't understand why their government turned their back on them. But they would shoot you just as soon as talk to you when you first met them. You know. Anyone else?
The lack of preparedness of so many people, family and friends.
Families,
Family and friends
Family and
who
friends?
don't see the need.
yeah. It's everywhere,
Well, probably our biggest concern is that, exactly what she said, they're not prepared. And people live from a week to 2 weeks of groceries. If something major happens, exactly what you said, where are they coming? They're coming to your house.
Yeah,
Yes.
those who say, well, I know where I'm going when it hits the fan.
Yeah,
yeah.
they're coming to your house because they may know that you have supplies or food, or you've prepared.
If they're capable of coming to your house.
In month 4, when we do the class on the 5-mile radius, we'll get into that a whole lot deeper. But here's the thing. Here, one of the steps in the 5-mile radius is doing your risk assessment or vulnerability assessment. And one of the things that I'll show you is looking at your 5-mile community and how many grocery stores you have. Our gasoline, groceries, gasoline, pharmaceuticals, and groceries are stocked with just-in-time service, right? 3 days. 3 days of food. If they're stocked for 500 people average per week, just as a number, right? And all of a sudden everyone needs toilet paper because of COVID or whatever it may be, that 3 days just went to about a day of supplies. And now you got a major problem. And we'll look at that a whole lot deeper in I think it's the 4th month with the 5-mile radius. We take all this information and we start looking at your police department, your first responders, high school graduation rates, colleges in your area, dams, highways. We look at all this stuff. I'll show you how to pull that information, free, open domain, and put it together to come up to say, in my 5-mile radius, these are my most likely threats. It's not Trump, it's not Biden, it's the ramifications of their decisions that's impacting me in these areas, okay? How many of you believe that you're being lied to?
Today or?
That was pretty impressive. Every hand went up, I think. That's good. That's good results. I used to drink the Kool-Aid. I drank it for years. I went anywhere they asked me to go. I was going over 300 days a year to third world places, doing whatever they asked us to do. And I just kept drinking the Kool-Aid. Where next, boss? Where next, boss? Where next, boss? Right? And along one of those trips, near the end, along one of those trips, I asked one of the crew engineers on the aircraft, I said, we were out in Africa. I said, how come we never go to Ethiopia? It's like we're always taking aid to other countries and doing stuff. And he said, it's simple. He said, they have nothing to offer us. That's when the lights started going off for me. You see, in many cases, we're downloading coats and blankets and food to starving people, which is good. Humanitarian aid is good. But what we don't hear about is the dope deals that are being made behind the scenes of, we're gonna bring you this, but in return, we want these minerals, we want these resources, and that's what we're taking, right? As a congressman from Idaho told us once when we went to hear him speak, he said, always remember, the government has nothing to sell, and they don't have one single dollar extra. So every time you get a raise, they're going to raise something over here. They're going to raise a tax, right? And it's very, very true. They give you $20 raise on this, they raise fuel taxes or whatever it may be, right? So there's a massive disinformation campaign that's out there, has been for all the way back to the 40s and 50s. When they first started forming Hollywood as we know it, they implanted CIA agents into Hollywood, and CIA agents were a huge role in these scripts, right? And they would use, they still do today. Think about in, some of y'all are puppies. Back when Star Wars first started coming out, Battlestar Galactica, right? They hit the screens, they then were making hundreds of millions of dollars, and they had all these toys and gadgets, right? What happened soon after that? The government announced Strategic Defense Initiative. They use movies to gauge the populace on how receptive they are going to be to things, right? There is absolutely nothing you see on TV that doesn't already exist. It's already old. So we used to, I started waking up and asking questions. I retired anyway. I started seeing things happening to America that were like flashlights going off in my head. It's like, this stuff's really, really familiar, and then it hit me. It's like, these are things we used to do in foreign countries to other governments and other people. This is things we used to do to other countries to sway elections without them realizing what was happening. Sometimes in the country and sometimes from outside of the country. What's happening to you, it's happening to us, right? So former CIA Director Casey, who served in the director capacity from 81 to 87, once said, "We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false." Good old Henry Kissinger, a German American and former Secretary of State, said, "Who controls the food supply controls the people. Who controls the energy can control the whole continent, and who controls the money can control the world." Who's trying to control the world right now? You heard of the World Economic Forum? Klaus Schwab. Guess who Klaus Schwab's mentor was? Henry Kissinger. Klaus Schwab came out last week. The World Economic Forum came out last week with their annual report, and in that report they said by the year 2030, Agenda 2030, ring a bell to anyone? By the year 2030, 41% of the current jobs in the world today will be gone. 41%. Why? AI and robotics. And if you've been following this for any period of time, there's an author, Patrick L. Wood, who has spent most of his life researching and following this transhumanism, technocracy. He's been talking about this for 10 to 20 years. Is by the year 2030, the #1 profession that will be hired is counselors. And they're going to need counselors for all of these skilled engineering jobs and all these other skilled professionals who are going to be jobless. Why does that matter to us? Well, it may be us, but it's going to have dire impacts on our country, on our economics, on our education. What are we going to send the schools to, our kids to college for? Maybe that's the point we say, you know what, go to trade school, right? Live life not by lies. You must understand truths and realities Can you separate what you see and hear from what you were told to be true? Is there a difference between a Democrat and a Republican? If most news is a lie, how do you know the truth? Have you reached a point where you have lost hope in everything going on in the world? And are you the greatest threat to yourself? Knowing yourself, keeping your feet balanced, your spiritual, psychological, and physical well-being is so, so important. All right, I have a short video here. It's like 2 minutes. This kind of sums that up, right?
As the world watches and listens in horror, the peaceful pro-democracy demonstration in China comes to a violent and bloody end.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Wolves hiding nearby, whispering do or die around me. You say your last goodnight while I
There is another very important phase of warfare. It has as its target not the body, but the mind of the enemy.
The target of psychological warfare is against the enemy's mind.
It is words and ideas.
The ammunition used by war.
Its mission is to influence the thoughts of the enemy soldier, and at the same time
is expected and encouraged to study foreign languages and the social sciences such as history, economics, and sociology. He must have a broad and sympathetic understanding of all phases of human experience.
gripping at my skin, the walls of night closing.
but the use of this force as an integral part of combat has now taken on new form.
As I wait to say my last goodbye.
Folks, this stuff's real. It's happening around you. It's been happening around you. People used to say, so, what was it like working, working in that world? It's like, all I can tell you is there's things around you that you don't see everywhere you go. You're not intended to see them, but they're there for a purpose. And they're all part of the big G. So why do we think the way that we do? The brain is a brilliant thing. It's so much of preparedness. So much of preparedness is psychological. the impacts of your preparedness, convincing others that they need to prepare, getting them to prepare, preparing for threats. So much of it is psychological, right? So why do we think the way we do? Is it taught morals, your upbringing, faith, mentors, education, self-developed moral study of history, personal experience, previous self-failures, influences around us, past trauma events, fear, and phobias? The mind is a brilliant thing, but it's also extremely fragile, right? And I used to work in Huntsville. I used to work with people that could hit a gnat in the butt in outer space with a laser, and they couldn't figure out how to turn a flashlight on. I would have to go to their building and teach them how to use a bullhorn. Brilliant minds, they don't drive cars, right? But these are the people who are all around us, and if there's any kind of disaster or societal collapse, these are people who are our neighbors. They have children, right? So in the coming classes ahead, we're going to talk about ways that we need to get to know these people, because they could have an impact on our community, okay? Psychology of preparedness, the concept developed why certain associations are learned more readily than others. You think the military has might. We have tanks and ships and planes, and we fight wars and all that. You would be amazed at how much time and money is spent by many of our government agencies, especially DoD, on understanding the mind of our enemies, the mind of our troops. DARPA, research through DARPA, stuff that would absolutely blow your mind. Do we fear the unknown but ignore possible events that could impact our way of life in everyday life? Do we prepare because of our own insecurities in life that could alter our safe place? Psychological preparedness can support risk acceptance and lay the foundation for progressive development of people's preparedness. I can tell you out of my own observations and past experience, when I really started getting into the preparedness, more in-depth teaching and so forth, when the Nigerian guy was in the White House. I had researched him a lot. I had absolutely zero trust for him. Okay, and it really stressed me out. It really kind of took over my mind. 2015, when Trump announced he was going to run as a candidate, and there was so much craziness and attacks and so forth. From that point through right now, I really separated myself kind of from allowing that to happen, and that was through faith. Absolute. When there were people emailing me and calling me, and they were stressed out because this happened or that happened, I knew of the event, but it's like, hey, you know, you've got to separate yourself from that and focus on your faith. You know, take time in your mornings, whatever is convenient for you. Because if you don't, this stuff will absolutely crush your mind. It will stress you out. My wife will ask me things now. Hey, have you heard of it? Because I really don't watch news. I really don't. I have sources that I go to for information that I trust, and I pull from that and adjust accordingly to it. Mainly because most of it's propaganda. Readiness in relation to preparedness, psychology definition, readiness, the degree of preparedness to act or respond to a particular stimulus, and the level of preparation for a given task sufficient to result in meaningful. We maintain car and all the different kinds of insurances, but again, we won't buy food and water or put it back. Today, radio show, talk radio hosts, podcasters are all selling survival foods. Why? 10 years ago, they wouldn't go near it. And now, they're all selling it. Being prepared is not buying loads of ammo and food. It is understanding risk and measures to offset threats. Then taking steps to secure needed resources to get them through the estimated period of the potential threat. Readiness is building plans based on risk analysis, vulnerabilities, mitigating steps to get the vulnerabilities identified. If you don't have plans based on identified threats, you aren't prepared. Okay? And we'll cover that in the classes ahead. A plan is not a plan until you test it to see if it works, you can do it, and have the resources needed to get through the plan. When I was in the military, we had lots of plans. We had bookcases full of plans. And they were all signed by the commander. And they had no clue if they could do anything that was in those plans. Excuse me. Inspectors would come in from a higher headquarters and they would say, okay, boom, pull this plan. We want to see your anti-terrorism plan. In this plan, you say that you've got 15 forklifts and you've got 500 barriers, and you can put them around your top five identified highest threat locations. Do it. And then the dancing starts. Well, sir, actually, we only have 3 forklifts, but we have 12 on order. If you don't have them, you don't have them, you can't use them, right? So much throughout our government, and probably private sector businesses as well. They have plans to check a box, and they don't know if they can do what that plan says. What good is that for you? Not at all. Always have a plan A, B, C, and maybe a D. You must know when to engage alternate plans when a plan, a portion of a plan, or the threat changes during the plan in place. What was it Mike Tyson said about I always had a plan when I went into the ring, and when I got punched in the face the first time, I knew plan A didn't work, so I had to go to plan B, something like that. You are the owner and driver of the plan. You must know when to change course to overcome what changed it. Threats are not prejudice. They strike at any time when you least expect it. A car wreck, a health problem, a job loss, civil strife, economic collapse, and so on. That's why we call it preparedness. You may lose a job. You may have reduced income, but if you have resources put back, that's one item or items you don't have to fund and you can pull from them. My wife has been shopping in our personal store since COVID started. Things that we have put back over the years as prices are escalating and continuing to go up. We have been fortunate and blessed that we've been able to pull items and we can as well, vegetables and meat and so forth. When people lose some contact with reality, psychological psychosis, this might involve seeing or hearing things that other people cannot see or hear, hallucinations and believing things that are not actually true. You live in a country that buys roughly 80 to 90% of its psychedelic, psychological pharmaceuticals from China. 80 to 90% of those drugs come from China. When they stop coming into our country, they've been deemed as the greatest threat to our country. If they stop shipping those meds to our country, and we have individuals who are on the street who can't get these meds, we have another huge problem in our society. Okay? Think the presidential election of 2020, post-election January 6, 2021, COVID, people stayed glued to the television while screaming the election was stolen. COVID was fake and January 6th was a setup. I know a bunch of them. You know, and it's like, do you know what psychological psychosis is? Your brain, it's kind of like they would run to the TV and turn it on, and they would sit there like little kids watching black and white TV, right? And someone would reach through the TV and punch them in the face 3 times, and they would get up, and the next day they'd come back again. It's like, please hit me 4 times today. They couldn't get enough of it, right? And many of them were Christians, right? Many of them were Christians, and it's like, you know the answer. You know, you've got to separate. Remember the massive queue following President Trump will pop out of the hat and land back in the White House at any time during the 4 years that he wasn't in office. The anti-clot shot citizens determined to not be vaccinated spent hundreds of hours watching videos about the shot and what it's about and doing. They still are. I know a bunch of them. I'm not criticizing or judging them. What I'm saying is these are valuable hours that you get in one day that you could be doing valuable things to prepare your family, yourself, your community, and so forth. Many of these same people will run out of food before realizing they're in trouble. Then they're gonna knock on your door and say, hey, I'm short of this, or hey, I know you have extra food because you talked to me about telling me I need to get it. Little Johnny's hungry. Can you feed him? What's going to be your response? Analysis by paralysis and normalcy bias, kind of along the same lines. Cognitive bias which leads people to disbelieve or minimize threat warnings. Analysis by paralysis can be beat with the following approach to dealing with an emergency unforeseen event. Face the facts, check through possible options for dealing with the disaster. Choose the best option and take action immediately. Severity on a large scale will not be easy to adjust or accept, especially if it involves death of a family member, a loved one, or a close friend who's a neighbor or something. The thing here is you don't want to be the weakest link and worst enemy. So are threats real when on TV? In the most recent disaster in California, of the photos and stuff they're showing of fires, do you realize how many of them are AI generated? That they're not real. So when you see pictures, what do you immediately think? Oftentimes people are, oh man, that's terrible. I'm glad I'm not there, right? They're in the comfort of their home, but they don't ask the question, what would I do? Or what would we do if faced with that, right? Does the brain separate a person from possible threats? It's possible. Phobias, there's methods of counseling they teach to separate you. Some people have addictions that help cope with loss and so forth. Medications. We're all human. We all deal with things in different ways. Which category do you belong psychologically? The 90% or the 10%? Only you know that answer. And hopefully you think about it, and when we come back here to do the next session and start focusing on food and water and maybe comms, I think, I can't remember. The whole goal is to have you at home safe, prepared, when 90% are out fighting over toilet paper, and there was an invisible death virus in the air, and there were people out there climbing over each other for it. Granted, they said that we were the ones that were buying all the toilet paper, which is humorous because we already have everything that we need, right? So understanding the mindset, if you aren't convinced, how do you expect to convince your family and your community that they need to prepare? Understanding individual mind is important when developing a team. And the same may occur at the group levels. Group levels also consider arranging security agreements. We'll cover that in a future class, MOUs and MOAs, handshake deals between you and Farmer Bob and Dr. Dan that you may need in your community, swap bartering, skills for needs. The human factor is the science of people at work. Sometimes everything's black and white and everything's cut and dry. Sometimes, especially with stress, when the stress level goes up in individuals, it has a great impact on their ability to make decisions, sound decisions. But if you do any research and you go look at past studies, the California study, the Stanford study, the Minnesota study, and you look at past events and you look at studies they conducted using human beings and how humans will act when not fed, the stress that it creates. Even when lied to, there was a study, I think, out of Minnesota years ago where they took like 100 men who volunteered and they told them they were going to feed them 1,000 or 500 calories a day for 30 days. The reality was they were feeding them like 1,000 or 1,500, but they thought they were getting 500, and they psychologically started crashing because they thought they were starving to death because they thought they were getting 500 when they were actually getting more, and they became violent with one another. Humans, it's the human factor that's really hard to understand, that we got to put forth an effort to understand, because those are the people who may be in our home, our family, and the people who are around us, right? We'll cover, we're going to do a whole block on, that's part of a day and coming up on security, talking about the 5 Ds of security and deploying your security out and so forth. Security is kind of humorous because everyone's a security expert until the event happens and then they call 911. You know, everyone has this picture of the security guy that's sitting at Dunkin' Donuts at 3 a.m., you know, with a 6-pack of donuts and so forth. But some believe the easiest solution is always to shoot first. At 3 a.m., you could be confronted by a gang of 10 thugs or a large family whose vehicle wrecked and now they need help. Would you shoot both groups? Right? These are things mentally. When you wake up at 3 a.m. from a deep sleep and your doorbell's ringing and you go to your door, do you go straight to your door? Do you have cameras you can look at and see who's out there? You know, can you assess what's going on around your property before you go there? Do you have a plan with your spouse of, hey, I'm going to do this, you do that? Why do people lock down a home and then leave their keys and garage door opener in a vehicle outside that's unlocked? You know, it's why would they leave their purse or wallet in a car seat overnight outside? Because that's home security again, they don't turn it on. Post vacation plans on the internet with departure and return dates, and OPSEC. To defeat a criminal, one must think like a criminal. Not everyone is bad, but one must accept the fact that we live in a changed world society. It only takes one time to change your life forever, and some people will hurt you. Be proactive and not reactive, and don't make their job easier. It's kind of like being a hockey goalie, if you know anything about hockey. You know, you can have 100 shots on goal and block 99 of them. That sounds like a good night, but that one shot that made it could be the difference, right? Understand the mindset, so we have people that we call the sheep. The sheeple. It's these that grow up to be these. The wolf, evil men in the world capable of doing evil deeds, and there's a lot of them. The sheepdog lives to protect the flock and confront the wolf. And that's what I want all of us to be. Okay? And then that's me at a family reunion. So everything that we do, you've heard me mention risk, manage risk analysis. Everything that we do is about risk, right? And using the risk cycle. You don't know what your risks are in doing the task until you conduct a risk assessment. And that's going to tell you where you're vulnerable, and then you got to decide how to fix it, right? So one of the things we used to do in the military, we had to do this every single week. No matter where we were at in the world, we had to tell our one-star general for all the countries and theaters that we were responsible for, what was the top 10 list? What countries did we assess the top 10 that in the next 7 days that they could go violent or the government could crash, right? So when I got out, I said, hey, you know what? Let's convert this over to the civilian world. So basically, I go through and I look at global events, national events, and my 5-mile range, right? And then what I do from that is I do my personal threat matrix. And I do a global level, national level, and my local level. And you may see on the national level, my #1 item I have on there is terrorism and government tyranny, instability through political strife and change in administrations. I've been the last 2 YouTube videos I put out, I have been talking about the terrorist threat. We don't have a lot of time here to talk about it, but it is real. It is coming home to roost. Osama bin Laden's son. The groups who used to be labeled as terrorist groups have united, right? And as a tax-paying citizen, you should be very proud that your government has been donating about $80 million every 10 days to the Taliban. Cash, pallets of cash, flying it into Afghanistan to the Taliban. And if you think 911's budget was $500,000 to pull off 911, how many millions of dollars they have received now over the last 3.5 years. And these terrorist groups, ISIS, they basically are cross-functioning now. And in Afghanistan, we're paying money to the Taliban to keep the ISIS in check. Well, they're so in check, they have set up from 100 to 1,000 terrorist training camps in Afghanistan. Now, where this becomes a problem is over the last 3.5, 4 years, we have let millions across their border. And after 911 and the global war on terrorism, or GWAT, they had years and years and years of intelligence and photographs and biometrics on many of these terrorists who were hardcore. We now have all these terrorists who have crossed into our country, and we have no biometrics on them. We don't know who they are, right? And bin Laden's son has vowed to revenge his father. And they've even talked about, to a degree, what type of attacks. They're going to celebrate attacks on anniversary dates of past attacks from history against Europe and the United States, right? And they have stated that they're already here. And this is coming from really reliable sources. So that threat is real. So anyway, that's my personal threat matrix. This is the risk management cycle. The factors to consider, again, we will cover these coming up in the future. Some of the things we're going to be working on in the future in other classes when we're focused on those specifics is identifying threats to your prioritized list for you, right? What are the potential threats that you could face in your 5-mile radius? Then what's your priorities going across building it? Where are you currently left to bang? You're going to hear me say this over and over and over. Is keeping you and building your plans to keep you left to bang. And that's the goal, is to keep you safe. Neighborhood and community PACE plans. This is your communication plan. Your primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency, right? For your family and for your neighborhood and your community. I have this, a lot of this stuff also is in book 1 and book 2, but this is what you set up, and this tells you if I need to get a hold of you and you're in my PACE plan, it tells me what is my primary means to get a hold of you, my alternate, my contingency, and my emergency. If you've been in the Army in the past, you should recognize what a PACE plan is. Your community and compound security alerting matrix. This is a sample here, but this is basically if, like in our neighborhood, at the highest point in our neighborhood, we use air horns, like on a boat, air horns. And according to your security alerting matrix, that air horn, how many times you blow it, will let the rest of the security folks in our neighborhood know that are there, what threat level it is. Neighborhood security communication plan as well. And so kind of summing it up, here's just some things. These are things that I listed that I've encountered in doing this over the last, I don't know, 15 years, 14 years. Preparers are unable to break free of original theories in preparing and adjusting to different threats locally. Okay, these are things I've identified. They're too focused on Washington, D.C., Trump, QAnon, and COVID-19 and media-driven propaganda, creating a psychological psychosis that kidnaps minds and creates a false sense of hope versus stepping up to the plate locally. Trump's gonna fix it all. I'm not anti-Trump. But everyone expects this guy to come in and he's going to wave this magic wand, you know. He's a 4-year guy, right? And he's got a lot of hate around him that he's going to be battling, right? A lot of these problems are problems that need to be addressed in the community, and they need to be fixed from the ground up versus from the top down, all right? Captured by the cause and not focused on the effect of the cause to individuals and how the cause will impact their life locally, not focused on their own local needs, such as meeting their share of community potential threats in their 5-mile radius. They're still contemplating bugging in or bugging out versus building a community team in their area. I was a bug out guy. When we first looked at coming up here, I wanted to go hang out with squirrels. My wife wanted humans. So we kind of compromised, and seriously, God put us where we needed to be. Because the neighborhood that we live in, we are absolutely blessed with the group of people that's in that neighborhood. How well we get along, time that we spend together, and it's awesome. So I'm thankful for that, and that my wife didn't let me go hang out with squirrels. Attending lots of meetings and not focusing on skill training such as gardening, water purification, medical skills, communication, raising animals, and so on. They're not building plans such as their emergency food, water, communication, security, offset plans, instead still maintaining a vision with their head, how it's going to go down. I have a dear friend in Alabama, a retired Army guy. He's a gun guy, and love him to death. But every time we have this conversation, he immediately starts telling me what he's going to go do. How do you know what you're going to go do if you don't know what it is that's out there, right? He's like stuck in this, I'm going to use my arsenal, and it's like, dude, you gotta make some adjustments. They will fail due to inability to gather and build intelligence plans within a community in 5-mile radius. The willingness to lead as needed lacks, and in many cases fails this much needed requirement. Very important to families and communities. Men need leaders. Need leaders. From state to state, where I go and I'm working to build communities and have groups of people there, the males just don't want to lead. They don't want to lead. It's like, well, who's leading your home, right? The men will go down and do training, and 80% of them are ladies. The ladies recognize this is a problem that we need to address, and they basically just get the shoulder thing from the men. Men need to be leaders, and they need to be leaders in their communities. All right? There are things that are going to be coming. You're going to see it coming probably in the next 6 months, that you're going to be hearing from your community, and they're going to be needing volunteers, and they're going to be needing men to step up, okay? It's just a prediction. Focused on skills they enjoy and know versus taking time to learn much needed additional skills lacking in basic understanding, design, and implementation. They do the same thing over and over and over and over and over, and they won't step out of their comfort zone to learn something new. And then just some realities. We already hit on them. Conclusion: understand and know yourself, conduct a risk assessment, and learn where you are vulnerable. Know national threats and focus locally on how national events will impact you and your family. Taxes, laws, presidential executive orders. Know your sheriff. Get involved in local politics, education, town council, chamber of commerce meetings. We have a primary and alternate in our neighborhood, and our team. Whenever they have meetings at the courthouse in Danbridge, we have at least one or more people attending those meetings. Okay, we want to know where the money's going. We want to know what they're planning, which will often tell you who's coming in to your community. Okay, stay outside the box and left bang. Know those who are around you, your family, your neighborhood. My wife's been back there flashing the. So, I'm from West Virginia and I talk slow. Does anyone have any questions on anything at all?